TREC and TAR, share a significant mission, and that is to ensure that the interests of Texans, your clients, are protected and advanced. We do that by also ensuring a level of professional expectations, that a level of professional expectations is met that supports the mission. So TREC we're responsible for education, both pre-licensure and or qualifying, we call it, and continuing education. We uphold high licensing standards, and then we do enforcement of complaints. The Association of Realtors is responsible through their brokers, and the association assists brokers with this, with training. So it's not our responsibility to train license holders. It's your responsibility to train license holders. We educate them, make them ready for training. Okay? It's your responsibility to train them, to mentor them, make sure that they have the tools necessary to provide the services at the level that the broker expects and that the law expects, and that your voluntary adherence to higher standards as a realtor your clients expect. So that mentoring is a key part of your responsibility. And lastly, through enhanced ethics standards that, of course, realtors, all of us as realtors, adhere to, above and beyond those that are required by the license law that we enforce through our enforcement division. So every couple of years, we come around the state of Texas. We do a 5-year strategic plan update every 2 years, and we go around, and I want to say thank you to all the local boards. We had 6 of them this past spring, for hosting us, and for everybody who came and participated. In the DFW area, we were over in Arlington for that. The results of that strategic plan are published. Were published, adopted by the commission in August, and published. It's available on our website, and it's no secret. Okay, it's no secret what we're about. If you want to know what's coming down the road, just look in the opportunities for future development section of the strategic plan. But I'm going to talk to you about some of those, because the biggest part of that is listening. Listening to you guys. We have some ideas for the direction that we want to go. The commission has given us a very strong direction and a mission, some specific goals. But how we get there, how we implement those, the pace at which we do it, the details of how we do it, come from listening to you guys. And in fact, the commission sometimes reorders priorities based on what you say are very high priorities. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to talk about licensing first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Avis and let her talk about broker responsibility. Then I'll come back and talk about some education initiatives. Then she'll talk about the relationship management tool. Then I'll come back and talk about enforcement. And then Avis will introduce you to our new website that is coming next year. Yeah, coming soon to a theater near you, a computer near you. A handheld device near you. Okay, so licensing. Best news. January the 1st, your license fees are going down. So they're proposed, as you may recall, when in 2011, the legislature granted us, you guys asked for it and got it through the legislature, and the commission became self-directed and semi-independent, which means we have control over our own financial destiny. At that time, we weren't sure precisely what we were going to need, because in terms of dollars, because the legislature had imposed as a price of independence that we that we pay them $750,000 every year. Okay? And so we have 150,000 licensees. Divide that out, it's $5 per year. And so we raised your license fees $5 per year to help fund that, with the commitment from the commission that when we were stable and believed we could afford it, we would reduce those, we'd reduce it back, rid ourselves of that. So last year in September, we reduced your fees by $4, and this year in January, we'll reduce it by $6, and we'll be back to where we were prior to SDSI. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can we ask a question? Why do you have to pay the legislature $750,000?
Because they put it in the law. It's really simple.
So there's no rationale to it.
There's a law that requires it.
Wait a minute. You asked if there was a rationale for the legislature doing something? Think about it. Good point.
All right. There is actually a kind of a backstory, which I'd be happy to share with you sometime, but it'll take way too long here.
Okay.
So we're proposing this session to, we are one of the few professions, true professions, out there. We do not currently have a requirement to even have a GED or a high school diploma in order to get a license. Okay? You have to have a high school diploma to get an electrician's license. You have to have a high school diploma for more than 50% of all the licenses that the state of Texas offers. There are no professional licenses available except this one to non-high school graduates. Well, because we do actually expect our license holders, to be able to read and comprehend at above high school level concepts, because this is a profession. Legal concepts are generally not taught in middle school. Okay? They're saved for later. We think that it's probably not beyond the pale to say we ought to at least require a high school education or a GED. Okay? So we're going to ask the legislature to put that in. You guys are okay with that?
Yes.
All right. We're also going to ask them to stop making us collect the $200 occupation tax for folks whose licenses are inactive. Okay? So I'm paying an occupation tax to hold an occupational license for an occupation that I can't practice. Okay, that's kind of an oxymoron. It's a problem. No other professional license, if you put your license inactive, do you have to pay the occupation tax. We're the only one, so we're going to ask them to fix that. We actually have some language suggested for that we copied from the others who don't have to pay the tax. It was just an unfortunate way that it was inserted into our law. And then we'll prorate that for reactivation. So if you renew inactive, you don't have to pay it, and then a month later you say, oh, I'm going to go active. Then we'll prorate it and collect 23/24 of it. We have also listened to you guys. This is something that's been asked for a long time. And so we need to make sure that we have the authority. We believe we do, but we're going to clarify it in the statute, to develop a specialty practice license modifier program. Okay, so to the extent that you want to advertise that you engage in property management, that's my practice, or commercial investment, or whatever, that we would develop a license modifier that says, well, at least you've had some minimum education and some experience before you can advertise that you do those things. Okay? So your broad license is like a law license, if you will, lets you do everything from drunk driving defense to, serious litigation. Everything in between, all kinds of transactional stuff. But you have to be competent. We already have that requirement. Lawyers have, we have it, that you can't do something that you're not competent to do. But how do you know, or how can your clients have some assurance that you have at least the minimum level of competency? And so we want to make sure we have the ability to do that, to create a voluntary program if you want to advertise a specialty, that you have some minimum level of competence through education and experience in that specialty. Okay? That sound like a good thing?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Another thing we have it for several of our license types, but we don't have it for real estate. Really simple. It's at a requirement. If you failed your exam 3 times in a row, obviously something you're doing isn't working, right? Time to go back and get some more education. Okay, and so we'll develop what those requirements are, but we need the authority to say, after 3 times, you got to go get some more education. Then you can come back and take it 3 more times. And if you fail it again 3 more times, then you got to go back and get some more education. Okay, because obviously whatever it was you were doing didn't work. So that is, that's all of the general stuff I wanted to on the licensing side, and so I'm going to turn it over to Avis to talk about broker responsibility, and I'll come back and talk about education.
I got to go over there because I don't have that secret microphone too. So I thought it might be instructive for you to see the meeting materials for our last meeting in August, so that you have a clear understanding that serving on the Real Estate Commission, you really need to have a GED or a high school education. So you can read this stuff. Now, I think Doug has some references later on. He's going to want to use this as a prop, so I'm going to leave it for him. I have a few little broker responsibility things to talk about. And I appreciate you putting yourself out there and asking a question about the legislature doing something illogical. It's real.
Do they do anything logical?
That's a long story. We've just rewritten and approved at our last meeting the broker responsibility class. I'm assuming that many of you have to or agree to take it and have taken it. And the comments that we've received, of course, through in that process of the rewrite were much of this content is repetitious of other content in other classes. And some of you have heard me say my feeling about that. And so for those of you who haven't, I'm going to tell you what my feeling is about that. And it is like this. When the industry stops breaking the same laws, we will quit covering the same material. So for those of you who are paying attention and getting it right, would you please sit with the people in your area who don't get it right, take them to coffee, and go over intermediary and various other things, and try to stop them from doing theft by property management. The class has been redone. It's been restructured. We have offered some alternative ways for the instructor to deliver the material. While Doug and I were having our lunch a while ago, a broker responsibility instructor who will remain nameless came up to beg for forgiveness for something that they had done earlier this week in teaching broker responsibility. Instead of reading the cases, oh my God, Hocom, she gave the cases out and broke the class up into groups and let them deliver the information after debating the case. And it went really well. And that's one of the suggestions in the broker responsibility class on how to deliver case studies and other material is to get interactive with the students. We have, in this new class, we do actually have skits for you to select students in the class. If you're an instructor or if you're taking a class, you might be selected. And it's things like intermediary done right, intermediary done wrong, things like that. So we also have some really pretty pictures of signs, and you get to figure out what signs might be wrong or right. Are those pretty? You'll also notice, and I'm only telling the people in this presentation, I'm not going to tell anyone else. So don't tell anybody that's not here. We'll see if anybody notices. All of the signage examples are James Bond and John Wayne examples. So let's see if y'all figure that out when we get in the class. You know, like McCandless Realty. That's John Wayne, for those of you who didn't know. Bond Real Estate, Golden Eye Properties. See if y'all figure that out. It was for fun. But broker responsibility, the first Train the Trainer is Monday over in Fort Worth. I believe the one that's happening here in at your board is on October 21st. Does that sound right to anybody? Has anybody signed up for that? Some of you guys have signed up for that?
And what's the exact name?
That's for the broker responsibility train the trainer. If you are an instructor and you want to continue to do that, take train the trainer. They're coming up all through the fall, and this class will be new in January. So there's a little weirdness going on with how licensure renewal falls and how we rolled out the broker responsibility class. For someone who asked this question a while ago, and for me, my license renews on the 1st of September. And I had taken broker responsibility when it first came out, the class that everybody's going to home about. And I got the opportunity to take it again in July because this class was not out yet. So if your license runs out between now and the end of the year and you took it already, but outside of the time, you've got to take the old one again. Sorry, it's January when it will end. And trust me, I feel your pain because I was on the writing group and I've had to sit through it twice. Oh my God. Okay. But I think it'll be better. I really do. It was our first iteration. It was our first rattle out of the box the first time we did it. And I think it was pretty good. This one's going to be better, and it will just continue to get better as we do what Doug's already told you. Take comments from you and pay attention and try to upgrade what we're doing. Another thing that people always want to know about when we're talking to groups is what's the number one thing that people do that if there was such a thing as real estate jail, we would send them to? And that continues to be leasing and property management. Another thing that I call theft by property management, where you steal people's money while you're doing property management. So it's theft by property management instead of theft at gunpoint. And last weekend and a few days at the end of last week, Doug and Carrie and I were at the conference of real estate regulators in Philadelphia. And if you really want to have a good time, don't go to a conference with real estate regulators. But if you want to learn some stuff, it's pretty good. And what I learned, because they had a panel of regulators from all around the world, not just in the continental United States, but from Africa and British Columbia and all kinds of places that I can't remember or actually spell or any of that stuff. And property management and leasing is a worldwide problem, not just a problem in Texas. And many jurisdictions struggle with that because their licensure, the people who do property management don't have to be licensed. And we've struggled with that. As you know, we've kind of begun to add a little bit of that now. In order to perform on a single family, you have to have a real estate license. Our brokers have always been responsible, continue to be responsible for property management activities of the licensees that they hold. And we do have some oversight authority to that, but some jurisdictions have none. And they're getting lots of letters and lots of complaints from people having their money taken and their property damaged, and they have no regulatory body to go to. So we heard a lot about that while we were in Philadelphia. So that's the number one thing. And of course, it would be no surprise following those kind of things would be breaching fiduciary duty and some advertising complaints and various other things that you would expect that would be complaints. And if you wanted to look at all of these materials, you could download them. That'd be fun, right? And one of the things you'd see in the staff reports, and I don't have a PowerPoint, but I can hold it up and you can see that it's pie chart. And if you wanted to see what the complaints are by category, that's what this is. And then the data that made up this is the next page, which shows you the complaints divided by category. And the value to this, because TAR is also working on this for us in terms of ethics violations and what they track. And this information that we've begun to receive in the last year and a half from the Enforcement Division of the Commission is material that we use to rewrite legal and ethics and broker responsibility, because we can see here's what people are doing wrong. So here's what we cover. Right?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
What is represented in the blue and the green, the big ones?
Leasing and property management is the green one, and the blue one is the all other stuff that we couldn't figure out what to call it. There's a more lawyerly way of saying it. I don't know what it is. Administrative. No, that's not right.
Okay.
Sales other.
I thought it would be something particular.
Well, of course, sales other. Things in sales other are negligence, giving rebates when they're not appropriate, paying referrals, stealing earnest money, all kinds of things like that. Stealing earnest money. Cool. Since you're in the Metroplex, you do know, I guess, at our last meeting we have a proposal up for a new mineral addendum, and you've all seen that, right? And if you haven't, yes, sir, in the back.
Where the three top complaints that you have regarding the property management.
The three top complaints in property management. No idea. Misappropriation of funds, the number one complaint. Negligence and breach of fiduciary duty.
Can you define those?
Can I define what those? You mean misappropriation of funds? Yeah, absolutely. They don't have a proper escrow account. They're not holding the funds in trust. They're taking the trust funds and making their car payment. Okay? They're taking the trust funds and making their house payment. They're taking the trust funds and going to Hawaii. They don't have a trust account at all. They commingle it with their personal checking account. Negligence for a broker is generally going to be failure to oversee the property management activities of the salesperson whose license you hold, because the broker is responsible for all that money that the salesperson is handling in trust for others. And so on a broker side, that would be negligence. And of course, all of the money issues also are breach of fiduciary duty, so kind of go hand in hand, if you will. Does that help? Okay. Mineral addendum, we did that. Yes, ma'am.
On the mineral addendum, are you going to still allow for us to use that on the ranch?
I have no idea. Is it use it for farming ranch or no? I can't remember.
I know they had decided they weren't, and then everybody wrote in, and y'all decided that we didn't.
I've got the form, and I'll look it up and tell you in a minute. While he's doing his next little ditty, I'll look it up when I come back and talk again on Fanny. Okay? If I don't forget, somebody over here remind me. Oh, the question was, can you use the new mineral addendum in farming ranch transaction? And for those of you that care, I will give you the answer in a minute. How many of you read the article that Carrie Lewis wrote on coming soon that was in the latest Real Estate Advisor? Okay. For those of you who didn't, there's an article about coming soon in the latest Real Estate Advisor. And of course, coming soon listings and the whole idea around that are to some degree an MLS issue, which is not a TREC issue. And for those of you who've been doing this a really, really long time, like me, you remember when coming soon meant that you went on a listing appointment and you signed it up and the seller says, don't put a sign up till I get the carpet changed and the living room painted. And I'll call you when that gets done. And we went, okay. And we didn't do anything until they called us and told us that it was okay. Coming soon has a different meaning. For those of you who don't know, lots of different meanings. One of them is like this. I'm going to take this listing, I'm going to call my 3 best friends and tell them about this property so they can sell it real quick and we can get it out of the way, and I don't have to go through all the trouble of putting it out there for the unwashed masses of real estate agents to show it. And what the problem is with that is, of course, the seller may lose money if their property is not exposed to the largest market of people that it could be exposed to by being put in a multiple listing service. So the advice of our general counsel is that it could be a breach of fiduciary duty for you to not, as a listing broker, listing agent, not expose the seller to the largest market available. And if you intend to do that, you need the seller's written permission to not put it out to the largest quantity of people that could know about it. So you might look for some kind of disclosure form for the seller to sign saying, I know you're only going to tell your 3 best friends about this listing, and I'm okay with that. assuming that they are. But they also need to understand what it means, what MLS means, all those other things. There's some specifics that you can get into. Read the article. It's a really pretty good article. Doug mentioned the license modifier, and it sort of segues pretty well into something that we've talked about many times since 2011, but I want to just say a little bit about it one more time. In 2011, we put into place in the rules the requirement that the broker establish in writing what competency means to them for the licensees whose license they hold to perform in the various disciplines. So if your firm allows people to sell commercial real estate, that you would have in writing a policy that establishes what is competency for you in commercial real estate. Property management, leasing, farm and ranch, residential, short sales and foreclosures, international property, property outside your geographic area of competence. What does that look like? And the reason I say this to a group of brokers yet again, is if you have an established policy that establishes that type of competency, you have it in writing, you have in your file an acknowledgement from your licensee saying, I've read this, I understand this, I've agreed to this, and the agent operates outside that competency without your knowledge. When the Real Estate Commission enforcement comes knocking on your door, and you can prove all those things up that you didn't know that you got the policy, you can throw the agent under the bus and maybe stay inside the bus where it's nice and warm or nice and cool. It's all about protecting the company and yourself and the consumer. Of course, as the Real Estate Commissioner, I can say only the consumer, but I'm also a broker, and I want mine covered. So I'm trying to tell you how to cover yours, if you get what I mean. Well, Doug, since I made sort of a rear-end comment, I'll let you talk next. That was bad.
Thank you, Avis, I think. Okay, so let's talk about education. Education, I probably have, it's the largest section of my note sheet here, because it's the area that for a long time, since the introduction of pre-license education in the early 70s, and then the continuing education in 91, it's an area that has taken up a lot of brain power, if you will. And there's been a lot of reaction, because every time somebody does something wrong, the answer is, well, they need more education. Okay, and that's probably right. Okay, but for the longest time, all we did was add more. We never actually looked at the quality. We just added quantity. Okay, so today, for pre-license education, for qualifying education, Texas has far and away the highest standard of any of the 55 jurisdictions. Okay, 50 states and all the other territories in the District of Columbia. The 55 jurisdictions, we're way ahead of everyone else in terms of quantity. So there really wasn't any place to go when we realized that, in fact, we're still producing inadequately educated sales agents and delivering them to brokers with their brand new license, and claiming that we've done our part to get them ready for you to train. Okay? We didn't. We don't do it well enough. And so a couple of years ago, the commission agreed that we need to start looking at quality. And they appointed an Education Standard Advisory Committee, 12 volunteers who have, I think they're up to, the first 6 courses, real estate principles, law of agency, law of contracts, promulgated contracts, finance, and what did I miss? Principles 2, there you go. Principles 1, 2, that's right, 6 courses. 5 courses, one of them is 60 hours long. All of those, they took the 6 bullets that are contained in the statute that says the course must cover at least this. Okay? Well, it's pretty easy for any course to cover those 6 bullets. Well, they've turned that now into 3 or 4 pages of detailed curriculum requirements. Okay, so the real estate principles course must have, and it goes through in exquisite detail, the concepts, and it also ranks them in terms of importance, the amount of time that must be spent of that 30 hours on each one of these conceptual components of the course. So new agents coming on should actually be better than 2 years ago. Brand new agents coming out with a new license. Okay, we also changed our exam provider, not because we thought there was anything wrong with the exam provider, but over time, when you have the same exam and you have some educators that are very focused on teaching to the exam, okay, the material gets predictable, let's say. Okay? And so after 12 years of one exam provider, we have now switched to another exam provider, and we'll probably switch back and forth more often so that we don't have that problem with predictability. Okay? Only about less than 20% of all the agents, you have to take 180 hours, right, of pre-license qualifying education before you can sit for the exam. And then before you renew your license the first time, you have to take another 90 hours, okay, of qualifying education. So you have to have 270 before you can renew your sales agent license the first time. So it allows folks to get the basics and then come to you for training, and you as a broker or an office manager or whatever should also have their commitment on what additional education. It doesn't make any sense to let them wait till the last 30 days to get their additional 90 hours. Okay? That really doesn't make any sense. So at the end of that 2-year period, that's the end of their apprenticeship. Actually, early would be better, well, I guess I'll say it. It's on the record. GRI is a fabulous way to fulfill those 90 hours. Okay? In my office, it was a requirement. Okay, but one of the things that they also don't do, so there's about 20%, that's how I started this, about 20% take the entire 270 hours because they got it as all as a part of a package, an online package. So they got all 270 hours done. And then they sat for their exam, and then they came to you, and now they're going to be trained, and then they go through their first 2 years, and then they renew their license, and then they go for another 2 years, and they haven't had any education for 4 years. None required until the last week, of course, before they renew their license the second time. They go and get their 15 hours, right? So we think that's probably not a really good way to do business. And, of course, you have the authority as a broker to set those standards different than our minimum requirements. Okay? So I encourage you to exercise that authority. But we're going to give you some help. We're going to make a suggestion, a recommendation. We actually have to change something in the statute to do this, where we can require the additional CE during the apprenticeship period. Okay, so if you really only take the 180 hours and then you take the other 90 hours in the first year, well, guess what? You can take the CE hours, but you have to have taken them before you renew the first time. Okay, so that's you guys okay with that?
Say yes.
Anybody think that's a bad thing? Okay.
They were asleep. I had to wake
them up. Okay, sorry. So we also listen to you. This is a test. Okay, this is a test. If we were to add one subject, one topic to the required continuing education, what would it be?
I think more information on contracts.
Contracts. It was number one, and it has been number one for all 5 years that I've been doing this. Okay, every time we talk to an audience, like, how come we don't have more education on contracts? And I said, we're working on.
And,
well, guess what?
And more, and actually more detailed, not just a scripted page that you whip through.
No, that's right. So right now, it's required in the Legal and Ethics Update for us to mention those promulgated contracts. But we're actually toying with the idea of adding a couple of hours to our course and covering promulgated contracts in detail, like not just what forms are current, which ones have been updated, but how to use them. And why did paragraph 6 change from 2 options to 3 options? Okay, and how do you advise your client on which of those options might be best in their situation? Okay, how do you describe those options to them? Things like that. So, and it really is, it makes so much sense because we're responsible. It's the one thing the commission does through the broker lawyer committee, that we have statutory responsibility to write form contracts so that all of you can engage in the practice of real estate contract law without a law license. Okay? You actually have a limited license to practice real estate contract law, provided you don't get creative. Okay? If you get creative, then you've gone over into the practice of law. If you just fill in the blanks and explain the alternatives and record your client's wishes, you get to actually make binding legal contracts. Okay? So, but that we're responsible for making sure that those contracts are balanced and easy for your clients to understand. Okay? And yet we don't train you on them. We need to fix that. We need to train all of our license holders routinely on the use of contracts. Okay, we're also going to strengthen instructor quality by requiring training in adult education principles and techniques. So, how many of you, the worst CE class that you ever took was actually in a classroom with an instructor who just read the slides? Like that? Right? They had all the materials and they just read the slides, right? And they didn't know how to engage. They didn't know how to engage all of that expertise that was out there to actually enhance the educational experience. Well, there's no excuse for us approving those kinds of instructors. Okay? And so we're going to take it up another notch and require that all instructors who teach the mandatory, the non-elective CE courses, broker responsibility, legal and ethics, or legal ethics and contracts coming up, and all of our pre-license, all the qualifying core courses, to actually have demonstrated competency in adult education. Okay, and so they will have to, like for example, if you want to teach GRI, you go through NAR's ITI course, Instructor Training Institute. That'll check that box. For many real estate instructors, they're members of the Texas Real Estate Teachers Association and hold a certified real estate instructor designation that they had to go through 2 days of classes to learn about adult education methods and techniques. Yes, ma'am.
The American Society for Training Development has an incredible offering as well for instructional design and techniques. Would that be a recognized certification as well, potentially for instructors?
Is it just design or is it also presentation?
Both.
Okay. We would absolutely, adult education methods, the psychology of it, and techniques and all that is not limited to just real estate. So you're absolutely right. Those best practices, if you will, are kind of across the board in adult education. And so, yes, we will look at any. We're gonna actually look at many and determine what the minimums are, and then determine which of them meet at least all of those minimum standards. And if you acquire and maintain that designation, then you've filled that square. Otherwise, you have to go to a set of training that we'll come up with. Yes, ma'am?
Do you know how often that training will need to be taken?
No, we're just developing. Right now, we have to get the authority first to do that. I mean, let me say it differently. There's a proposed rule out there right now. And so I encourage you to go through don't go through the materials. Just go on the website and look under the proposed rules and send us comments. If you think that's a great idea, please let the commissioners know, because all the people who think the idea is a bad one, definitely let the commissioners know. Okay? So it's helpful to get that balance. Okay? It's like the newspaper. It's filled with bad news, never any good news. Strengthen proof of mastery by adding a final assessment for certain non-elective continuing education, beginning with instructors. Okay, so it won't be this time, but if we get this requires a legislative change, because we can't actually require at this point a final assessment if you're in a classroom. There's a statutory prohibition against us determining whether you learned anything or not, as long as you did the time in the seat. Okay? That's just ridiculous, in my opinion. Do you share that? Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. We also, this is another proposed rule, and we've heard a lot about it, but we need to address weaknesses and close the loopholes in certain kinds of education delivered by correspondence methods. Okay? So, for example, there are some topics that we need to specifically address. Student identification. If you're doing it all from a distance, how do I know it's really you? Proctored exams, perhaps, is also a good way to have both take care of student identification and assurance that it's actually you taking the exam. The person who's going to get credit is the one who actually demonstrated proficiency.
Sorry, what is a proctor?
A proctor?
A proctored exam?
Somebody other than you is responsible for watching you take the exam.
Oh.
Right. Under whatever conditions there are. So they verify it really is you, and if it's a 2-hour...
So go somewhere else to take the exam so somebody else can see.
Yeah, and so for many years, before there was an internet, okay? How many remember that? Yeah. Before there was an internet, colleges and universities developed correspondence courses because not everybody could come to the college or university.
Come to town.
Right?
Couldn't come to town.
Yeah, they just couldn't come to town. So they need to be able to send stuff through the mail. But you know what they would send at the end? They would say, okay, well, you can come to the university and take that final exam. Or I can send it to a local librarian, judge, attorney, CPA, some other trusted third-party agent who would agree to do that. Many colleges, like the community college, they do it for a service. You go pay $10, and somebody will proctor your exam for you. So this is not a new concept. This is an old concept. But it specifically addresses a weakness in the current delivery of correspondence across the internet. So we need to focus on how to fix those. And we have some proposed rules on that we're going to have to sharpen up a bit. No repeat of unit review items in the final assessment. So, there are classes, although I've never taken one, where you get to the end of the unit and there's 10 assessment questions. Did you learn what's in the unit? They're all multiple choice. You keep guessing until you get them all right. And then at the end, there's no final assessment. The cumulative results of all of the units is your final assessment. Well, guess what? All you had to do was guess until you got it right. It's like, so how did I actually prove that I learned anything? Okay? Especially if you didn't even have to read all the materials before you got to the quiz. Those are some of the weaknesses, true weaknesses in instructional design that we have to develop some really sharp ways to fix. So I'm going to run through some of these other things. You know, we actually today have the ability to require every one of our license holders to have 100 hours of continuing education prior to their license. Did you know that? I didn't know that either until I actually read the statute, and it says that before you renew, you must have at least 15 hours. So the commission has always had the authority to increase it above 15 hours. That probably wouldn't have been a good thing to go willy-nilly, and where nobody's going to go jump up to 100, because that's probably not what the legislature intended. But we're going to ask them to cap it, okay, rather than have this floor. We'll have a cap. That'll give us some room to acknowledge that there are other ways to get education, not only to take care of the required items that the commission says you got to have at least this much, and then leave room for the market, okay, so that you can take other courses that you're interested in, like how to maximize the use of current communication technology to grow your business. Those are classes like that we actually approve, but it's not a requirement. So if we were to, does anybody know how many hours an appraiser has to have before they can renew their license? I'll just tell you, it's 28 every 2 years. The home inspector who comes out and inspects your clients' homes, if you're buying, or some people do it for sellers as well. I used to. How many hours do they have to have? 32. Okay? I mean, you know how many hours lawyers have to have?
Oh, it's less.
15 per year. Okay? Twice as much as we have to have. Okay? That's probably not a good standard. We have the absolute, just to make the point clearly, we have the absolute highest quantity of hours for pre-license education, and we are near the bottom. Not at the very bottom, but we are near the bottom for continuing education among the 55 jurisdictions. Okay? We ought to at least live up to our professional counterparts on the law side, and perhaps go to 30. Okay? That would be a reasonable cap, I think. CE credit for some presentations. Oh, we want to allow CE credit for some presentations by commissioners and staff. So today, do you think the hour and a half you're going to spend with us that you'll learn valuable things? Okay. Did you know that today, if MetroTex sent a class roster in and said, we want to get you guys CE credit for all of this, the answer would be, sorry, can't do it. Because there's a prohibition in the statute against you getting any credit for any presentation that I make or that any of the commissioners make. Now, how many people think that's stupid? Yeah, so do we. So we're going to ask to remove that so that next time we come, you can actually get an hour and a half of CE credit for all this. And chicken, yeah. But no pedicures, okay?
After 12.
Yeah. We also would like to allow you to get some credit for CE credit for particular rigorous topical training that a broker would provide or require to be that their agents take. Okay, so there are some classes that we believe you don't need to, especially if we had the 30 hours to play with and not just 15 now, and we said, okay, brokers, if you train on certain topics, okay, then you send in a roster just like if it was a CE class, and provided you send it within 10 days of the class and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to register to be an instructor. You don't have to register to be a provider, and you don't have to pre-clear the materials with us as long as the topics are right. Nebraska, 2 years ago, Nebraska introduced that, a cooperative arrangement or initiative between the association and the commission there, and to raise the hours for CE, and that was that was one component of it that the association and the brokers asked for, that the commission thought was fairly reasonable. Okay, so it's a limited number of hours, maybe only 6 or 9 hours out of the total, but if it covers a certain required topics, then you can get CE credit for that.
Question.
Yes.
So the majority of the working brokers have more than 15 hours. I usually end up with 50. 40 to
Good for
50
you.
hours.
Good for you.
But they're miscellaneous.
Yeah, it's about this is more about the agents than the brokers. Yeah, most of the brokers get plenty more hours.
So we're talking about brokers' hours.
No, brokers
Agents
presenting
also.
it, training their agents in specific kind of topics, okay, and then getting CE credits awarded to the agents for attending. Okay.
So we're not discussing brokers' hours.
No.
Everybody's
So if there were associate brokers who took the training, obviously they would get those hours too. And then the last thing that I wanted to chat just real quickly about is we have an initiative that we're working on, and it'll probably take a couple of years to actually get this working, but to develop an annual real estate summit for consumer real estate issues, working with TAR and the Real Estate Center. Our two, the three of us actually work very well together. But there are, in almost every industry, there's a benchmark summit, okay, an education event of some kind that if you're in that industry, you're there, right? Because you can't imagine not getting the updates that are going to happen. Well, this is one of the areas where we don't have that. There is no such thing where you get the mortgage brokers and the appraisers and the title companies and the insurance companies and all the other service providers that appear on the HUD-1 together to talk about developments in their parts of the industry that are affecting all of us, and have that opportunity to work through those in a collaborative way for the benefit of our clients and the industry. So that's something we want to develop. Any questions for me before I turn it back over? Yes, ma'am. Well, the concept is very similar to the Board of Texas Legal Specialization, okay? Which we're borrowing the concept from. There are places where there are jurisdictions where you actually get a separate license, okay? If you want to do property management, there's a separate license. You don't have to have a real estate license. You just have to have a property manager license, okay? We don't think that's the right way to go. We think there needs to be a base license and then these modifiers above that. So we're going to ask for lots more input as that is put together, but it has been a request routinely for the last 5 years. In fact, I was in the office not 2 months, okay, in October of 2009, and I received a fully formed, fully documented request to essentially establish the requirements for a property management license. And at the time, of course, it was way too early in the game. There were much higher priorities. But we've reached the point where I believe that there is space in our professional development and in our regulatory structure for something like that. And so we're going to continue to talk about that and develop it in a way that has plenty of input. So if you have ideas, but I would encourage you, if you just want to go on the website for the state bar, and then they have a sub-site for the College of Board of Legal Specialization, and read how you earn those specializations and how you maintain them, and what it's a voluntary thing, and then what the prohibitions are if you don't. Okay? And it's really just an advertising restriction. You can't advertise that you engage in those specializations if you haven't earned them.
The guy in the back asked me a question about property management and what to define that stuff, and I've pulled this out of the meeting materials. This is one case out of the meeting materials that we heard at our last meeting. I don't know how many pages that is, but it's a few. And this person had 4 counts of property management, taking people's money. And this is public record. You can look at this, you can download this and read all this if you want to. The license was revoked, and this person was fined $44,000. So, here you go. You can read it and you can see what all this person did to the consumer, as well as did something that I'm just going to give you some advice right now that you didn't pay extra for. If you get a complaint filed, answer it. And send the commission what they're asking for. Because that's part of the problem is this person was non-responsive. Not only did they steal money from consumers and damage, so a church was one of the people they took some money from, and they weren't responsive. So that kind of makes you crazy. You know, like, okay, so you're evil and stupid. You can read it. I mean, I do not make this stuff up.
You couldn't.
No, you really couldn't. I have some really good friends that have been in law enforcement for a long, long time, and I used to think how jaded they were. And now that I've spent some time on the commission, I sort of see how, if I dealt with really bad people all the time, how it sort of jades your attitude. And I'm really glad when I have an opportunity, thank you for asking me to come up here twice. And that's another story, and the rest of you can get in on that joke later. I know you got your hand up. Oh, Rich, do you have your hand up? Oh, no, wait a minute, Bill. It can jade you, because all of the stuff that I read, I get emails every day with some sort of agreed order, which means somebody did something wrong and they've agreed to the punishment. And I read all that stuff because I do have a high school education. And it drives me crazy, because sometimes I can't believe that somebody would do that to another human being, and sometimes I'm thinking, how stupid are you? You know. But anyway, yes, Bill.
Could you tell me again, where would you get the list of complaints by what you have?
It's in the materials for any meeting. If you'll go on the website and you go to meetings, and then you find our commission meeting, and there's like columns, and one has the agenda, and the next has like all the meeting materials, and it's a PDF. You download it. And in one of the first agenda items are staff reports, and it's under the enforcement staff report. And that's also where this case is, not under staff reports, but it's an agenda item.
Is that my package?
Sir?
Is that my package?
No, that's not yours. I don't know your name, but it's a woman, so I figured it's not you. And the person not from the MetroTex, so that's good. So, how many of you have used eHarmony of real estate? No, I'm sorry, the relationship management tool. Yeah. You like it? Yes. Sometimes? Yes. Love it? Yes. Love it? Okay. So for the rest of you, we're going to go kind of quickly through this. This is a really incredible tool that Christine Anderson, who works for the commission, spent a whole lot of time with some other IT staff people creating it. And just like any technologies, there's a few glitches here and there, but it is altogether fabulous based on what we used to only have. Do you agree with that, those of you? So we'll quickly look at this. It's just made the process for getting somebody's license to you much faster, much, much faster, because it's all done online. And it also decreases all of that processing time because it's less human interaction, if you will. Although I'm all about human interaction, in certain cases, this one is a good one to not have it. And so you know how it works. It's a way for you to ask someone to come and work for you, or someone to ask if they can work for you. They have to pay a little fee. And once, say you've interviewed somebody and they want to come and work for you and change companies. And I know no one in the MetroTex ever changes companies, but in our market, they change a lot. And so licensee can go online and say, I want to be associated with you. And then I go online and say, yes or no. It's okay with me or it's not okay with me, and it's done. They still have an obligation to notice their other broker that they're leaving and all of those other things that are in the law. But this process makes it happen really, really quickly. My favorite part, and that's because I'm a little bit hard, is when there's somebody that I have had that conversation with because they've done something that's outside the policy or outside of what I expect of someone to do, is that when I go online and open up this tool and say I don't want them working for me anymore, the thing that I click is terminate. Yes. Sorry. So you get that feeling, it's like...
It's terminate the relationship, not the person, okay?
No, but it just feels good, because you're already mad, you're already done, and you go online and you go, okay, sorry. Make it feel good later. Think about it. So if it's your first time to go online, the big deal, if you've never done this, is there's two things you've got to remember. They're the hardest things in the world for most licensees to remember, and that's your name, username, and password to get into your stuff at the Real Estate Commission. So find that yellow sticky note that you put it on. And if you can't, it's going to take you a lot longer. So do better with your password. After you log in, you just click through a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You guys are smart, and a lot of you have used it, and it's really too small to see from where you're sitting. So basically, this is what I've said. And it shows you kind of how an invitation looks and all those kind of things. Another thing that you can do that's really pretty powerful is if you have people whose license you hold that you want to require to take the broker responsibility course before they can renew their license, and they don't have to by law, you can go on there and click them as a designated supervisor, and then their license will not be renewed until they've taken it. So it's a way to force it upon them, basically. And of course, obviously, if it's someone who has a broker's license working for you, you can't make that happen. It's just a salesperson that you can do that. And I have some pretty strong, in my opinion, policies about who has to take it. And it's pretty much anybody who is answering questions for other agents, which in most real estate companies is anybody. Particularly if you're brand new, it's your buddy that started the week before you did. Yes, sir.
And what is the item you check?
Broker Associates, yes, sir. I might pitch part of this to you, but okay. He has asked a question about something that industry uses as terminology that's not in the law, and that's broker associate. So I have a broker's license, and I'm the designated broker for a firm, and I hold licenses. And if Doug was working with me at our real estate firm, we would call him a broker associate, although that has no meaning to the Real Estate Commission because he's a broker and I'm a broker. We're both brokers. So that's just the way it is. Now,
still gives him that designation.
It gives him that designation, yes. And the question was, what is my liability for his actions in this example? And how can I force him to take that class? What's the third question?
Competency.
Competency. How can I force him to follow my competency rules? I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to tell you that I have the policy, and it applies to everybody associated with my firm. And if you're not good with that, adios, motherfucker. That means I quit. So now, what were you going to say about my liability for your actions?
Thank you, Rick. Avis. Sorry.
I figured when the governor said that in Houston that I was clear to go to say that.
So, if you're a broker and you associate with other brokers, you have a written agreement about how you're going to conduct business, yes? Okay. That decides what your responsibility is to the world, with one exception. Okay? And that is, it has zero to do with whether or not that broker associate is responsible for something that they did in answering the commission. Okay? So, let me say it a different way. I don't even know that you're connected. From the commission perspective, I have no clue which brokers are working with other brokers, because nothing in our life, we don't have a double dating version of the relationship management thing that says, oh, by the way, these other brokers are working with me too. Because that's all taken care of in your business relationship. From our perspective, any broker is responsible for their actions and the actions of all the license holders, all the sales agents under them, okay, whose licenses they hold. So if a broker is a broker associate and doesn't hold any licenses, then they're only responsible for themselves as to the commission. As to the world, your agreement and all the other civil law stuff, if they did something bad and harmed one of your clients, one of the firm's clients, are they responsible? Yeah, a judge will tell you, or your E&O carrier will tell you. Okay? So what that means in very practical terms is if I get a complaint against a broker associate, okay, I don't give notice to the managing broker of the firm with which they're associated because I don't know who that is. Now, if the complaint said, not only did Doug do something bad, but Avis's company did something bad, well, both of them are going to get notice from our legal department about it. But it's not because they're a broker relationship, it's because we've gotten complaints and they're named parties in the complaint. Okay? Now, if I get one that's only against a sales agent, I'm always going to notify their sponsoring broker who's responsible for whatever it was that was alleged. Well, not necessarily for everything that they did, not for everything that was alleged, but whatever they did bad, the broker's also responsible. I hope that helps.
So basically you're saying that even though you might be affiliated with her firm, she would not be your sponsoring broker?
That's correct.
Not if you have a broker sponsor.
Only agents. Brokers can't sponsor other brokers. They can enter into contractual relationships, but from a licensing perspective, they can't sponsor. Okay?
Did that answer your question? Are you good? And for those of you who didn't understand my flip answer, I was saying as a broker, I can make it the rule in the agreement that we sign when you come to work for me that you're going to follow my competency policy or you're not going to work for me.
Right.
Whether you're a broker or a salesperson or a staff person. I will tell you that if you have people who are in clerical positions in your office and they have a license, I would recommend by policy you cause them to take the broker responsibility class as well. Because I don't know if you know this, but while I'm here today, I've probably got somebody asking my receptionist, who is licensed, a question about a contract. So she has to take that class. You're on.
Okay.
Oh, the mineral answer is that it's in the contract.
It was in the contract, but the contract is not there now.
It's not there in the
It does say
contract
special
anymore, and this doesn't
indemnity,
say
so we're
that.
good.
So you can use this, I guess, with the
And
farming
thank you for
contract.
that.
Okay. Is that on? Okay. So as Avis said, it's kind of a really big deal for us, this relationship management thing, and I hope it saved you a lot of work because it saves us a lot of work. In fact, we average I get a report, meet with my senior staff every single week, and it was one of the standing report items. How many RMT transactions were completed online last week? Okay, last 5 business days. And the answer is always somewhere between 380 and 560. Okay? So average, say, 475 times a week, an agent is changing brokers. 475 times a week. Okay? That's why we call it the speed dating program. All right, enforcement. Let me talk about enforcement a little bit. For those of you who follow things that happen at the commission, and oh, by the way, you know, right, that we simulcast live all of our meetings. So when the commission is meeting, you can put it in a little window on your computer and listen to everything that's going on. Okay? And watch the people who get up and make fools of themselves, including me, making reports, all of that. But there's a lot of substance at our meetings. So we encourage you to do that.
November the 17th.
One of the things, November 17th is the next one. It's actually the 18th, right?
Yes.
Tuesday the 18th. Tuesday the 18th. But one of the things that we talked about last 3 meetings, came up about 3 meetings ago, was the recovery fund was depleting rapidly. Okay? Depleting rapidly. So the guy that we took his license away and fined him $44,000, we also paid $100,000 in claims for all the money stolen from people from our fund. Okay? From your fund. Okay? So those kinds of things. There was, it takes a little while to get through the courts and all that kind of stuff, but we did have kind of a run of claims, and they were the maximum claims.
So what happens if they don't pay the 40%? Realistically?
Realistically, we have a judgment, same as, we try to collect a judgment, except we have the Attorney General's office working on our behalf as well. Oh, sorry. So the fine, the civil fine, is $44,000. What happens if they don't pay it? Okay, one, they'll never get another license. Of course, probably won't. They may end up in jail anyway, but that's a different story. But it's a judgment just like any other judgment. Okay?
Why wouldn't they collect the whole $100,000 rather than letting him get away with part of it and making us pay the rest?
No. That's a civil fine. In addition, he has to repay every penny that came out of the recovery fund.
Oh, I see.
Okay? So both, one will never get another license until he repays the $100,000 and the $44,000. And it's at interest over time. Chances are, but it's like any other judgment. So you file it where you think you might be able to collect it, and if there's ever a home sale, or he gets a bequest from his rich aunt or whatever. Anyway, if there's ever an opportunity to attach a real asset, we'll have it.
Recently did $90-something thousand on that one.
We did. We have. It's amazing to me, but it does work that way. And occasionally we get a notice that we have a judgment and they're trying to sell a property, and they come like you would try to negotiate, or your client's attorney might try to negotiate their way out of a judgment lien against a particular property. Of course, it doesn't. Anyway, there's lots of pitfalls in that whole process, but occasionally we get money from it. We also had one fella that was a fella, paid $100,000, and about 2 years later he came and gave us a check for $100,000 plus interest. Okay, so he gets his license back. So I don't know if he just had a really good run at the gambling tables in the Bahamas, or if he went into another branch of business that was much more remunerative or something, but he wanted to get his license back. He didn't get it back immediately, but a requirement is you got to pay all the money that you owe. That's the base requirement before we even talk. Then we can talk about what you did to lose it in the first place and has enough time passed, which kind of leads me right to my next point, which is we currently do not have any waiting period for someone whose license has been revoked. They can apply the next day for a license, for a new license. Okay?
Doesn't mean we get it to them.
Doesn't mean that we give it to them, but we have to go through the whole process, and they're entitled to a hearing, and we waste a lot of money and time and all that. We actually have in the statute for other license types a 2-year waiting period. Okay? We'd like to duplicate that in our license law. That's okay with you guys. Okay, we'd appreciate that.
I have another question.
Yes?
It seems like you do a good thing in that you don't really try to put people out of business.
We
Is
don't.
that why you just fully probate these things and read these and have a good thing? Fine in
Yes.
a month or 6 months, fully probated, and then start watching these people closer?
Yes. So quite often, and in fact, I had one I struggled
what was
with
the
yesterday.
first
Here's the
one?
question: How it seems like if you read our orders, the agreed orders, that Avis reads every single one of them that comes to her. I have to sign off on them, and I read them in detail. But there's many of them that come, and it says, okay, this guy was he pled guilty to a possession of somewhere between 5 and 50 pounds of marijuana. Okay, somewhere between 5 and 50. That's the broad category. Obviously, it wasn't for his own use, or maybe it was for his own use. I don't know.
Not from Colorado.
Yeah, not from Colorado. But it has happened, less than a year ago. Okay, already a salesperson got the, pled guilty and then told us about it, right? Which you're supposed to do. You get, you plead guilty to something, you have to tell us within 30 days. Otherwise, that's a separate, non-reporting is also a separate violation. But he came forward and said, yeah, I did that. Well, at the local level, the judge made a decision. And that decision is that he paid a $2,500 fine plus court costs, and he got 4 years fully probated. Okay? Fully probated. Now, just so you know, that's the same kind of judgment that often comes down for criminal DWI. Okay? And it has all kinds of conditions on the probation. You got to go through rehab training and all that kind of stuff. You got to meet with your probation officer. Blah. You got to do all of those things routinely. And if you mess one of them up and your probation is revoked, you go to jail. So almost without exception, we know less about the case than they did. So that if they adhere to, so we will revoke their license for the same, or suspend their license for the same period that they're on probation for, and tie it, if you revoke probation, your license is revoked as well. And so if they truly are on the mend and adhere to all of the requirements and turn their life around and all that good stuff, don't go to jail, they get to keep earning a living. But if they don't, and we always make sure it's a salesperson that their broker is aware of all of it. Okay? So that if you want, you can go in and terminate that relationship. Okay? If you want. But if you don't, that tells us something. Generally, tells us something. Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay. And not all of them, there are things that we don't do. For example, in a situation like that, if we found out about it and then we got no response, we'll revoke the license. And we spend a lot of time on that because we end up having to go to the State Office of Administrative Hearings for that. We spend a lot of time. And right now we don't have the ability to collect costs when the person, by not responding, has made us, spend all this money. We never collect costs from folks who negotiate with us and get to an agreed order. But if we end up having to go to SOA, State Office of Administrative Hearings, we would like to be able to collect costs if it's a default, because we shouldn't have had to go through all that. But we need that in our statute as well. We also like to add confidentiality protection for all complaints until resolved. So, and it's not so much in this business, although it is. This does happen. people file complaints to be vindictive, right? And then now when your E&O carrier says, have you ever had a complaint filed against you, you have to say yes, because there was a complaint filed against you, even though it had no merit at all, and it got dismissed. So, the first few times, that's not an issue, but after a while, the E&O carrier goes, well, wait a minute, I know there's smoke, no fire, smoke, no fire, smoke, no fire, smoke, no fire. Oh, come on. Sooner or later, it's just human nature to go, there's got to be fire somewhere because there's lots of smoke. Okay? So we'd like to be able to protect you, is to keep all of that confidential until, from the outside world, not from you and not from the person who complained against it, but from those other prying eyes until after it's finally resolved. Okay? We don't have that ability today. So we'd like that. Two other kind of short things. One is we're adding short sales to the list of brokerage activities. So if you're a short sale advisor, you need a real estate license to do that because it's a short sale. Get it? There's a sale involved here. There's a lot of short sale advisors that aren't licensed real estate folks. The chain of command disclosure, although many agents would like all of the clients whom they serve to believe that they are the expert, right? And that there's not a support staff back here, and it's not the broker who's responsible for all this. In fact, they don't even want people to know that, there is a broker or what their name is or any of that kind of stuff. Okay? That is a disservice to our client because the contract, the service agreement, whether it's a listing agreement or buyer representation or whatever, is in the name of the broker. Right? That's the person who's ultimately responsible for delivering all the services on that agreement, although you as the sales agent may be the person who actually does the work. That broker is responsible. And so having the client be able to know who to call when the agent isn't responsive, isn't providing that level of service that they anticipate, we believe it's appropriate not only that they go to our website, but actually when you do your delivery of information, like information about brokerage services, which we're going to rewrite in English again, that you also tell them, what's the chain of command here? Who do I report to? The team lead, and then the office manager, and then the broker, and whoever else, and all those folks with their contact information. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to, in the case of broker associates, does that change how the contract should be written as well as chain of command? No,
because all those services are between the brokerage. It's not the individual broker. You may be delivering the services, but delivering on behalf of the brokerage, the company. Okay? So that chain of command disclosure works the same way.
But if they go online to the website,
they won't find them.
They won't find them.
That's right. They won't find them, and that's part of the problem why this written disclosure is likely needed. Okay? Anybody have heartburn with that?
So it's not likely that you'll change that to put broker associates affiliated with sponsors?
It would be helpful at some future iteration of our database to be able to establish those connections, but then we have to put a concomitant obligation on each of those parties, just kind of like we do for relationship management, to say if you associate with someone else, both you have to, the broker who you're formerly associated with has to tell you that you left, and the new broker now has to tell us who they're associated with. Okay? There's not any support in the law for that right now. That would be a service. So, in other words, we couldn't make it punitive for not going along with it unless we had the authority, and the law doesn't support that right now. Okay? So I'm going to turn over for the last portion to talk about, principal DBA in all ads. That's Avis's big thing. We want that. And if your name appears in the ad, Sally, salesperson, okay? Bobby, broker. Brenda, broker, doesn't matter. Well, if your name appears in an ad, your license type also has to appear. Okay? So you are either, there's only two license types. You're either a broker or a sales agent. Okay? And you can't hide behind principal and realtor and, you know, real estate consultant and whatever other president, chief executive officer of the world in my mind. Okay? Make up all kinds of names people do that mislead consumers. They absolutely do mislead consumers. So we're thinking about changing the advertising rules. If you put your name, one, you always have to put the name of the principal DBA of the broker that you represent. Okay? Doesn't have to be their legal broker's name, but their principal DBA. What's on the contract, and what are you advertising under? Okay? That name has to appear there, so they can go find them on our website. And then you, if your individual name or your face appears in the ad, it's going to have your license type. You're either a broker or you're a sales agent. Okay? No hiding.
So I have a question.
Full disclosure.
In the lending world, you see their numbers all over the business cards and all over their advertisements.
Yeah, numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate numbers.
Doug doesn't like that. We're not going to get it. We're going to. I mean, I can't been able to get drunk enough to agree to that at all.
Yeah. You know why? Because air conditioning people and plumbers and tradesmen, we are not tradesmen. We are professionals. So I will tell you this, and I firmly believe it, and Avis has heard this 100 times. I have no problem saying, as an attorney, I don't have to put it on my card, I don't have to put it in my ad, but when I file papers with the court, my license is on there. So when I make an agreement with a client, my license is on there. I have no problem with that. That's what the chain of command disclosure is all about. And also what all those business relationships are. That's what that's about. But in every single advertisement and on the side of my truck and all that kind of stuff, no, I'm not a tradesman, I'm a professional.
We're going to run out of time, but you got a question.
Just a quick question. It's going to be a real comment. You can't let realtor say realtor.
Oh, they can say all that.
You can say realtor.
That's also,
You just can't hide behind it. So I'll have to say sales agent.
So you'd say
sales agent, comma, realtor, comma, ABR, comma,
You can put all those other things you want,
MIC, comma,
anything else you
ABI,
want,
comma.
that you've earned that's voluntary and all that.
Okay, so I would have to put my name,
Correct.
sales agent,
Yes.
comma, realtor.
Realtor, anything else you want.
But if they're a realtor, they have to be a sales agent.
No, they don't. Could be a broker.
They could be a broker.
Could be a broker and a realtor.
We've had this debate.
Yeah.
We're still having this debate.
Okay. There'll be a proposed rule, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about it and comment on it. Okay? And it really is just about not hiding the truth from your clients. Not hiding the truth from your clients on who's ultimately responsible. Okay?
Let's let Avis do this, and then we'll get to the calls, because I want her to do the last of this, and then let's take the
What's your question? And we'll get back to you, Bill. Okay, cool, Bill. Okay, real quick, I was going to say, so you understand principal DBA. Keller Williams Realty, that's us. I know that we're some of the people that have the problem. And so if we have the Oldmixon team as a DBA, he also, right now, by franchise rule, has to say Keller Williams Realty. But if we have filed the Oldmixon team, Realtors, with the commission as a DBA for our brokerage firm, he actually doesn't have to have Keller Williams Realty.
Correct.
From the commission standpoint. The only reason it has to be there is because it's a franchise rule. I think that's wrong. I think the principal DBA of every real estate firm in the state of Texas should be on every advertisement of every sales associate, every broker associate, every broker. Amen. Thank you very much. Quickly, we've got a new website coming up. It's going to be real cool and interactive, and I got to see a presentation of it, and I got to tell the geek people what we really wanted to have, and I don't know if we're going to get all that, but if we do, you guys are going to just love it. So let's see if I can figure out how to make this work. It's coming out first with the appraisal board, because they have less stuff to look at. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of deep pages, a lot of things that have to be ported over. So that's what it's going to be next year. Where's down? Page down, up there. Okay, and it's your...
It's not down in.
It's not moving. Okay, well...
There you go.
New logo. New logo. I'm so excited. Woo-hoo. Next. New logo, new cover scheme, responsive design, audience driven. It's going to have some integration with social media. Anybody, we've got a few young people, so, you know, y'all know what they do.
Yes, hard.
And I know there are people that are older than me that actually do Facebook and stuff. If you're trying to find out what I'm doing, don't look on Facebook, you just got to find me. User-friendly content so that you can, that is categorized in much easier ways that you use it. You know, we have created all of this in the back office a while ago, but we left it all looking the same, so it's really weird to me to use. Here's how it looks for finding the appraisal board. Again, they're first because their stuff is small. And there's their pretty pictures and all that stuff. And then there'll be a calendar of what's going on. It'll be kind of like it is now. You can click on it and see what that is and see what's going on. And I don't know if we're going to get this or not, but one thing I kind of hope we get someday, like on the next round of it, is every real estate school in the planet uploading all of their classes, putting them on a calendar, and you being able to find out where you could take Introduction to CCIM in Texas on the TREC website. Wouldn't that be cool? Or whatever the class is. I just made that one up. CIPS. Consumer information. Where's the consumer go? Easily to find other links to other places, to file a complaint, to see what all that stuff looks like. There's all kinds of creative things that other licensing authorities around the country are doing to help consumers understand the process. Because we get a lot of complaints from people about things that licensees do that they can't do what the consumer wants them to do. It's outside their licensure. So maybe some information on what's it all about? What's the buying process? What's the selling process? How to get to manage your license much quicker and easier, and maybe even a way to tell whether or not what you need to take, not just what you've done to it, because we used to say, I grew up in Collin County, and I'm now in Williamson County. If you know what any of that is, then you know that I can still say done to it. Anyway, then a whole thing on FAQs, a whole bunch of updated FAQs. That's coming on our website too. And I'm excited about this, and I know mostly you're buying into my passion because I haven't shown you much, but it's going to be cool. Bill, what was your question?
Oh, on signs.
Yes, sir.
Can agents put their cell phone only?
We don't have any rules about that. Right?
Does it have to have the broker's phone number on it and in addition to the agent's cell phone?
Oh, and we have a size.
Right.
We have a size thing.
But you have to identify the broker in all advertisement, okay? All advertisement, and it can't be any less than 1/2 the size of the largest contact information that's there. If the largest contact information is the broker's cell phone and it's in 28-point type, then the broker's name has to be the brokerage's name, and that'd be the individual broker. If they're sponsored by a brokerage, has to be in 14-point.
Okay, but wait. So we have this name. We have the name of the broker. That's not the issue.
Okay.
I'm going to put just Bill's cell phone on it. No contact with the broker's cell phone. I own it. It's my personal AT&T line.
Not a requirement.
Oh,
it's not a requirement to have more than one phone number. No.
So the broker does not have to have any phone number.
Just the broker's name.
Okay.
Right. We do this in baby steps.
Hold on, let's just bring you your microphone. Karen's
There you
ready
go.
to.
But if there is an agent with their name and number on it, then what is required of the brokers?
Broker name.
Only the name,
That's it.
no phone number?
That's it. All we need to know, right now, the advertisement rule is on the face of the advertisement, there needs to be some identification of who the broker is.
Thanks for staying over.
Okay? Who the brokerage.
Name only.
Name only. Then they go to our website and look them up.
Yes, ma'am.
The microphone's
Very in the microphone. Get your exercise.
Example, independent broker, one person, no agents. You have a website. on the website, you have your name, and your name is the way you are licensed as a broker with the state.
And it says comma broker or something, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, here's my question though.
Okay.
If you have another company name you've just come up with for the sake of that website, but your name is still on there, and your phone number and your contact and email and everything else, do you have to have that company name on all of your advertising or your signs?
No, but you have to have it registered with us.
DBA.
Okay?
So any name that we decide we want to use for a marketing tool on a website or something, we have to send to you as well?
Marvelous Marge, okay, comma, LLC, whatever you want. That's your name that you advertise under, okay? You've got to tell us about it. Otherwise, that's violation.
Advertising under my name. My name is the big name on it.
Right, but you can't say Marjorie Smith. Marvelous Marge.
Okay,
Call Marvelous Marge. That's a business name you're advertising. You have to tell us.
Okay.
It's a form. It's a DBA form. There's no cost right now. Just
Okay, and it's just an information thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys staying over. Avis, Doug, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And our lunch sponsors have left, but thank them when you see them too. Thank you, everyone.